Welcome to the Nordic Mythology podcast. I'm Daniel Farrand, owner of the company Hornsvoden. As always, before we start the show, I'm going to plug our Patreon. I say it every week. Everybody's sick of it, but it's the lifeline of the show. It's how we keep going week in, week out, how we're able to speak with incredible guests like today. So if you can, head over to Patreon/Nordic Mythology podcast. Starts from £3 a month, and you get access to the entire back catalogue. So over 300 episodes that you can't get anywhere else. You get the Q&A episodes we do with our guests. You get the smut episodes we do, myself, Mags, and Claire, where we look at some amateur Viking erotica. They're always a lot of fun, and they're a little bit silly, but they, sometimes you need that. You just need a little laughter in your life. And you get access to our lovely community we've got over on Discord, just people we've collected over the years, people who like the show. So if you can, please do go and have a look on there. Like I said, it literally is what keeps us going. It is how we're able to do the podcast. So if you enjoy what we do and you want us to keep doing it, then go and check it out. If not, 5-star rating, positive review wherever you get your podcast. Maybe someone else will discover the show and like what we do. And like, subscribe, bell, all that stuff on YouTube where you can see our faces if you so wish. And today I'm solo. Mags unfortunately has to be off. She's had a personal matter, a family matter. So she will be back next week. But excitingly, she's flying here on Wednesday, and we're going to meet for the first time. So that's a little insider news. We're going to go film some stuff together. So that's exciting. But my guest today is recurring. How is this the third?
I think it's the third time, yeah.
Third time? Yeah, so that voice belongs to Jonas Lau Markussen, who I'm gonna ignore my notes. Who is a Danish artist. I think most people will know your books, the Viking. Is it the Viking Age Anatomy or just the Viking Anatomy?
The Anatomy of Viking.
Okay.
That's the main one. Yeah.
Swap it around the way I said it. But that is such an iconic book that I saw way before anyone else was doing. I'm sure maybe people were at it, but yours was the first one I saw for free online, a tutorial on how to draw Viking art. And you keep putting obviously different books out, and I think that's where most people know you from, is these incredible books and material that you were. I mean, when did you put the first out? Because I saw it when I 10 years ago, I feel.
Yeah, it's it's been sort of an ongoing process, because I started the work in, I think, the end of 16, so it's we're into 10 years now, doing this work. But I think I published it, the first one, The Anatomy of Viking Art, I think in 2018 it was finished. I think so. And then I started working on the next one, The Anatomy of Germanic Art, covering the period before that, from the migration period up until the Viking Age, at the beginning of the Viking Age.
How do you find that one not having the Viking word in there? Because everybody loves that Viking word. I imagine it makes a difference.
I mean, you're actually touching on a point, because because I'm just to sort of close the loop here too, because now, like, I published the Germanic book last year, I think it was, in addition to other books that was sort of like, I call them companion books, showcasing like all the artifacts from the periods that correlates to the finds referenced in the books, the anatomy books. So that was published together last year, and that was sort of like also the beginning of what we call Gelmir, the new project that I partnered up with Connor, Einer's Journey, to work on. So that's sort of we're sort of in not an in-between period now, but we sort of like consolidated a lot of the work I've done before, and sort of getting me a project started
Mm-hmm.
properly, and
Properly.
so yeah, and sort of planning like what's the next book and like what's the next project we want to do. We have tons of ideas, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, a part of that is sort of also consolidating my prior books, and it's definitely a thing where I'm thinking we might need to merge the two and just call it the Anatomy of Viking Art, and then have the
Yeah.
two volumes combined in one. Because yeah, the Germanic word is not sexy. It was the least not sexy one, but I mean it yeah,
It
it's tough.
doesn't get the numbers moving the same
I
as.
know it doesn't really have the Viking brands of
Mhm.
it
And it's
all. So yeah,
it's frustrating because
and
there
it's
will
a
be.
shame because it's such an amazing period. Like and it's sort of like to me, it is part of the Viking age of the
Mhm.
era because it's like after the migration periods, so much happened in Scandinavia, and a lot of this stuff and the ornamental art is that's where it originates. Like that's where it emerges. So if you
Mhm.
want the full story of it, like you kind of need to go back to that period and drag it all through
the
the
pre
time
the,
of the
the
Viking Age.
pre-Viking age.
Yeah,
The pre-Viking age, early Viking age. Just get
yeah.
that word in there somewhere.
I mean, and also the period has so many names, like the Swedish names and the Danish names. And
Yeah.
I think we're sort of coming to calling, I don't know, coining the term proto
Mhm.
proto Viking because I mean,
Yeah.
just gotta get that Viking word in there
It's
somewhere. Like, yeah,
it's frustrating, but it's how it is. And obviously Connor knows how to work social media and
yeah,
that side of things. And that's the world we're in now, and it's frustrating because you you want to create artwork that's as accurate and as true to the history and the artifacts as you can, but you also have to play this frustrating social media game of keywords and making sure
yeah.
that
I
you
think it.
get Viking in there because it's going to put it in front of people.
But I mean, it's also a matter of like that's one part of it, but it's also like my understanding of the periods and like the Viking term is very academic in a way. Like the definition of the periods and stuff. It's like it comes from some academic history of like what was in focus at one time and the understanding of our past at one point in history, right? And
Mhm.
I think, at least in my view, it's probably time to sort of revisit like how we understand it because I mean even the the definition of the Viking Age sort of relies on two dates that happens in the UK,
Yeah.
which is weird.
Yeah,
And
that
it's about the Scandinavian period, right? So I
it,
mean
it
there's a lot of stuff like that that's sort of like okay we
it's
maybe it's time to sort of softly revisit our understanding of. I mean, in many ways, not just that, but and I think a lot of people are like sort of revisiting like
mhm.
what that period means, like what. I mean, we got so much more new knowledge about it too, so it's evolving on a continuous basis, and I think that's also part of like studying this thing and communicating it sort of also relaying that it's not a fixed thing, our understanding of it.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, that would be sort of dangerous in some ways to sort of only rely on that. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's only natural to sort of
Mhm.
rebrand it in some ways.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's always changing, isn't it? Anyway, as new things are found, discovered, we understand things a little bit more. It's not stuck in a little pigeonhole the same way because I think that dating using Lindisfarne and then the Stamford Bridge is a little odd because it focuses pretty much solely on the kind of Western exploits. And there's so much to the East that never really gets spoken about or really looked into by most people. And again, maybe that's because a lot of people interested in this tend to be English, obviously Scandinavian, but then you get like England and America. Certainly from my side, from a business standpoint, they're the two big hitters who get interested and buy this
Yeah,
kind of stuff.
yeah, yeah. But it is sort of like that understanding of it sort of frames the story about the age in a very specific perspective from the UK perspective, right? So it from the British perspective. So yeah, it kind of sets a tone in a way that's it's not the best, I
Mm-hmm.
would say, to get
Yeah.
the full understanding, and that's a bit of a shame. Yeah,
Well, good luck to changing all of that.
yeah. I mean,
I can't. It's impossible changing anybody's mind on social media, let alone the.
oh, I know, and that's the thing, and like, yeah, I think that's part of the Gilmere thing because like doing the books, I set out to do like books that were sort of aimed at like a general public, sort of like easy to approach in a way.
Mhm.
It was based on the academic understanding of the art styles and stuff, but I sort of wanted to communicate it in a very approachable way, and I think I learned a lot since doing them.
Well,
And,
I think that is probably quite similar to me with the podcast, because
yeah,
I mean when I first got into Hornswogden and then trying to draw not work on horns and go down that, I was like, this everything I draw looks terrible. It doesn't look right. There has to be something. I came across your book, and that was the only one that I could find that was a clear kind of like this is a structure. And I could understand it as a very, very basic introductory level. So I think you nailed that. But similar to me with this podcast, you start out with probably a certain level of information and then you learn so much more. I've done 300 of these and I've learned more than I ever thought I would about the Viking Age. So
yeah,
now, but then I have to almost come into every episode as if I'm that kind of naive, new, green Dan, and putting myself in that mindset, trying to ask the questions that new listeners who this is their first episode are like, oh, well, I
yeah.
don't know anything. I've not listened to the 300 before.
Yeah, but that's beautiful because it sort of adds a layer. You sort of have both perspectives. You have the sort of like you can sort of go into that sort of character or like take that on in a more educated way to sort of like ask the right questions from
Mm-hmm.
your perspective right now, right? Understanding the person you were then, right? And I think in some similar ways, I sort of like I'm not like because when I started out, I really wanted to do it properly and stick very stringent to sort of presenting the historical facts right and stuff. And that sort of like maybe got in the way of like presenting it in a like even more understandable manner, like sort of sticking to those academic sort of characteristic descriptions of
Mm-hmm.
what composes a style, right? And if I was to do it today, I would sort of I would have that in mind, and I would of course stay true to that, but maybe present it in a different way that was even more approachable
Mm-hmm.
to a newcomer to the arts, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, there's a few diagrams and stuff that I hear from people too. That okay, I don't get it, and
Yeah.
like there's a few bits that are very good to have as a newcomer to understand the styles and like the overview and stuff and connecting to the timelines and stuff. But I mean, today I could do it like even better, right? To sort of cater
Mm-hmm.
to the newcomer. Yeah.
Have you thought about doing just a volume two? That seemed a popular thing that people do.
I
The
mean,
revised, updated version.
yeah, I think what's on the docket right now is sort of like doing the definitive version of that work,
Mm-hmm.
and sort of like Because it has, I know it has made a, like, as you spoke to it yourself, like it's made a major difference for a lot of people, like
Mm.
in helping people understand the styles and get a really good picture of it. So that's like that's so important, and I'm so how do you say, like appreciative of like how it landed and how, what's the legacy of it in a way.
Mhm.
So it is sort of that I want to honor that and do the definitive version. But then I also know, like, in the future there might be sort of an even more like yeah, a new version, and
Yeah.
it's not going to be the anatomy of Viking art. It's going to be something a different
Mhm.
beast, so to speak, right?
Yeah. It's
Um,
the there's a fine line between making something like easy and accessible to understand, and then it can become overcomplicated, I think, very quickly. We're interested in a time or in a period of time that we actually know very little about, and there's so much confusion and thoughts and ifs and buts and maybes that pick any topic. Tattoos, you could, did the Vikings have tattoos? Well, you then start going down this path of, well, we have this one source that says maybe, but even that word that he uses isn't necessarily tattoos. So you'd branch off there, and then you looked at the other one. Well, we don't have evidence, but we know that they decorated everything, so that's a possibility. We know tattooing existed before, and so you start putting all these asterisks in, and then it's this actually what seems like a simple question or answer becomes a, 2,000-3,000 words. So you have to almost pick and choose what battles you're willing to not bend on, but leave vague for the audience to easily digest it.
yeah, and I think that in some ways speaks to what I'm also like, or what we're sort of also leaning more into and going forward, is that sort of like, what is the purpose of all this, right? Because I mean, is it just to have an understanding of what was actually true then? I mean, that's part of it, and there's a lot of question and a lot of unknowable and a lot of like different ideas about it. But then on the other hand, it's equally as important to sort of see or investigate, like, so what do we do with it today?
Mhm,
Like, what kind of importance does it have for us today, right?
mhm,
Like, yeah, we can investigate if the Vikings had tattoos or not, but maybe more importantly, like, what does it mean for us today, right? Because a lot of us have tattoos, and
mhm.
we want to have like Viking tattoos or whatever that, however you wanna like
Yeah,
talk about
that's
it, right?
another branch off the question: is what actually is a Viking tattoo? Is
Yeah,
it?
exactly. And that's it. And that was kind of what I was speaking to before. Like, with the books I've done, I've been very focused on stick. And I mean, and of course, you should stick to the historical facts. I'm not discounting that, but I think going forward, we're setting off to be like a little bit more free to investigate. Okay, what's the meaning of it today? Like, how do you use that knowledge today? Like, how do you translate it into tattoos for today? Like, yeah, there's a certain methodology to the art being made in the Viking Age, but we don't necessarily need to do that today in the tattoos we create. Maybe it's more exciting to do some new stuff rooted in the old traditions and see what we can build on, how we can sort of make it come alive today, right?
Mhm.
Um, and and I mean, it's there's a lot of gold in the old knowledge
Yeah.
to sort of build on, and that's sort of what gets me really excited today, right?
Mhm.
So sort of like, what's the possibilities here, right?
Yeah, I think I've said this on here a bunch of times that outsiders looking at Viking art sometimes could maybe think it's just a little bit messy and chaotic. You know, the especially like the Ernest style where you've got tendrils here, there, everywhere, until you try to draw it and make it fit into
Yeah.
a space. Then you actually realize, oh, this isn't actually chaos.
No.
It's really well constructed, organized.
Organized chaos, yes.
Yeah, and that's almost arguably even harder to do, is to make something look chaotic but also be fit into an area of flow and work. And I think that, yeah, doing it well
Yeah.
is really difficult. I mean, a lot of people have seen. We touched on this a little bit last week, actually. Tattooists who don't specialize in this artwork, who then try to draw Viking art, and you can tell because it doesn't quite work or flow or fit. The overs and unders maybe are wrong. They double up.
Yeah.
It's a real skill,
Yeah.
and learning as much you kind of redrawing it, which I think is the best way you could ever learn it, is just what you guys do, is pretty much just recreating, redrawing, working through finds,
Yeah.
and I bet you soon pick up on little bits that you probably would never see just by eye.
Yeah. I mean, definitely. That's definitely my experience. Like doing this for 10 years now. Like, and that's the thing. Like, I really appreciate being able to sort of relay this without having people studying it for fucking 10 years
Mm-hmm.
to be able to do some good work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, my speaking to the complexity of it all, like, because I mean, and that was the case for me too. Like, starting out, like, you tend to sort of uh, s- uh, do very complex designs, whereas the trick is because sort of the chaos of it all sort of tricks you into believing that you should start out being very chaotic in your layouts and stuff, like having it very complex from the get-go. But actually, a really good tip is to sort of scale it down, like, because the complexity sort of comes naturally if you just understand some of the very basic knots and build from there.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's a very good tip if you want to get into it.
Yeah.
To
Uh,
creating Viking art is don't overcomplicate it from the get-go.
Would that
Start.
be? Would that? Sorry. I would say. Would that be like? Let's say you have, because again, I think a lot of people, they'll just start with maybe a page and start drawing, rather than giving it a confined area, like drawing a box or a rectangle on that page and letting it then work within that space. Because a lot of artwork was kind of done within little confined areas, wasn't it? Um, would you then, let's say you have a main beast in there, like an Ernest figure, would you make that as big as possible in there and then allow everything to flow with it, or is that what is that kind of what
Yeah,
you meant by?
you could say that. I mean, it's if we stick to the historical styles, like, there are, depending on the style, there are different approaches, right? But they all sort of tend to, as you kind of alludes to, build upon like one main motive that's very simple, that has like
Mhm.
a figure of eight loop, and then builds from there. So it usually has that sort of like main knot, so to
Okay.
speak, and then it layers upon that.
Okay. So you can kind of
So
always see that idea underneath, and it just.
yeah,
But once you start getting maybe three or four laid on, it's a little
yeah.
bit more difficult to
If
see
you
it.
start with like three or four main beasts or something and try to weave them into each other, and then layer on like a lot of serpents and stuff like that, or a tree, or like, then you
Yeah.
like it becomes like very chaotic, more than it needs to be. Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's sort of talking about the urn style is a really good example, because you have those figure of eight shaped beasts, like ribbon beasts or animals, and that's sort of the main composition usually. And then you have like usually a couple of serpents intertwining with the main figure of eight loop.
Hmm.
But the figure of eight is the main composition element. So the other servants are sort of like laid out where there is space, and that's a very simple method, really, because there's only two layers. But in that, the complexity grows from that. Just weaving in the serpents on
Yeah.
top of the other beast. Yeah,
I guess so. They kind of gap fillers, I guess,
it
to
kind of
go
is.
around.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
I mean, again, depending on the composition, of course, and what you want to do with it. But yeah, in principle, that's the idea. Yeah.
Through your travels of redrawing different pieces, 'cause it seems like that's where a lot of focus has been lately of redrawing tons of different Milners and then putting them together in one place and being like, these are all the Milners we can find, all or sword variations of different pieces with artwork on. Have you started to build a picture up of maybe what they could have meant or their mindset or stories behind them? Obviously, Luciano, who's been on here a few times, who knows an incredible amount, always talks about stories and patterns that he can see in there, and trying to he focuses a lot on getting into that mindset and maybe seeing the journey. Do you get any of that? Is that something that you
Yeah, for
focus on, or
sure.
kind of hypotheses? Because it is kind of just guessing. We'll never know.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean that's sort of my experience, that especially working with it that deeply over that amount of time, sort of, because you begin to see patterns, like they sort of emerge, and you see like the same motives pop up again and again across uh, different eras and style
Mm-hmm.
periods and stuff. So you kind of begin to tie together some imagery that sort of not necessarily always telling a story, but then you can sort of correlate things, and then yeah, it's sort of a long process of like things emerging in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you definitely get that that's slow emergence of some ideas of stories coming together. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's definitely what we want to sort of dive deeper into with the Gunmill project too.
Yeah.
Um, Sort of going into more like how does the mythology connect to the imagery, um, and because and that's also like a very sometimes a difficult thing to communicate, because like in popular culture there's a specific idea of like what is this the realm of like Nordic mythology and what does the art depict and stuff like that. We have a very set picture of what it is usually, right? People coming into it, and I mean, of course, a lot of it is true, but there's also like aspects of a different picture emerges when you Luciano speaks to that too in his work, that and I think I've touched on it on prior episodes too, that this sense of chaos in the artwork is also like that's very deliberate,
Mm-hmm.
because it's sort of it's like a fog of sort of magic beast and stuff that sort of hides the object but also like imbues it with magic. So that's a very like uh, uh, common essential thing of the artworks, that they sort of that's very different from modern art and design, that the, with tattoos nowadays and stuff, you kind of want that sort of like a main beast and Mjolnir that sort of very clearly communicates a message, right?
Mm-hmm.
That sort of gives a very clear impact of a story or an idea of, or a meaning, right? And in some sense, it was the opposite with a lot of Viking art, right? It was kind of hidden in the artwork, the meaning,
Mm-hmm.
and that was very deliberate.
I, I
Um,
never thought of artwork imbuing things with like magical. I don't know. I guess I always thought very sillily runes. You always think runes and magic. Even there's an argument that that's uh, just a modern misconception that maybe you would have things written in runes that would imbue, but like runes themselves wouldn't necessarily be magic. Runes have that association, so I'm thinking, well, if they're written or something, maybe there's that magic. I've never thought of the image itself as being somewhere having that property. But then again, we're talking about certainly earlier in the Viking Age, people who don't read or write. So why wouldn't it be in the
Yeah,
art?
it's yeah, I don't know how to speak to it, but definitely it was. It had like, yeah, again, it didn't have that sort of like symbolic meaning. It was literally like imbuing the item with some sort of magic, and it's even alluded to in the mythology and the sagas, right? I can't remember the name of the saga of the story, but there's an example of like one guy having this sword, and the story tells about like when you sort of, I think you have to whisper to it or something, and there's a little
Mhm.
snake or a serpent in the on the sword that sort of comes out,
Okay.
and that sort of very much speaks to this idea of because I mean the swords have all kinds of animal imagery and snakes and that stuff, so it speaks
I,
directly to that image, right?
I can't help but thinking that that story might be a bit of a euphemism for
Oh, for
for
sure. I
something
know
else.
how
You
you
you you just have to whisper to it. Just whisper. You just go on. It'll it'll do its thing if you whisper.
guys take note.
Who knows? I guess it also has a psychological effect. If something is really deeply, ornate, even pre Viking Age, but the Sutton Hoo helmet. If somebody turns up to the battlefield wearing something like that, or having an armor that's you know detailed, carved, or a sword that's really ornate and beautiful, there is that doubt that has to go into people's mind of like, well, he's not got that by being a bad fighter. He can probably knows how to swing that thing, so that has to play into it.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, and I'm just thinking like it's like speaking to the art. It's like because what's so clear to me, like working with it, and especially taking the earlier periods into account, is that it was so clearly a very specific, well-known tradition of creating artwork. And I mean, you just have to assume that the people using the armor and stuff, like they had a very clear understanding of not necessarily the symbology of the imagery, but what it meant to have like an ornate helmet or a sword that had this ornamentation. Like you just get the sense that this was so imbued in the culture,
Mhm.
that this was such a, like on one hand, a prestige thing to have that kind of ornate object, but also that there was such a deep tradition in how the art was made, because you just see it's the same method in, like, it changes, but more in a superficial way. Like the essence of it is so much the same from the migration period to the end of the Viking Age, that there is such a deep rooted understanding and meaning in
Yeah,
the way of creating the art, right?
there.
Um,
It's when you again, it's not something that I've ever really sat and properly deeply thought about. But then when I do now, just very on a surface level, just kind of start opening little doors maybe that are there, I start thinking, well, there is this artwork style. There are certain styles within the Viking Age, but there you have through lines and it's very similar in different areas, but there isn't pen and paper there isn't your book to pass to the next village over. It has to be taught, through tradition and through from mentor to kind of apprentice, but also over a big area, and keeping things even keeping even be similar to look at and be like they're similar enough just to even visually look at and recognize. That's quite remarkable that it's kept that kind of structure, and that would lean to there being some deeper meaning to it. It's not just squiggles on a
Oh,
on a
for sure.
box.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course you can definitely tell that at some specific points in time there was like some very like specific workshops here and there that sort of like evolved the art to a different aesthetic or like a variation of the current like the previous aesthetic of the styles, but it's still like very much rooted in the same tradition.
Mm-hmm.
You really get that sense like looking deep into it. So yeah, it's very clearly something that's delivered from one generation to the next. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Do you think those styles were just fashion changes? That is, or do you think they're deeper than that? Maybe it's because I guess like the Oseberg is very iconic with the Oseberg ship. But do you think that was made maybe just for that burial? So you get, I don't know, like if somebody's special enough, why not make their own variation of an art style? For you're already putting all this work into it, or do you think that it's
yeah.
bigger than that? Or
I'm only guessing, right? But
yeah,
because we can maybe never really know. But and as I said before, like there's definitely like specific at current times there are like workshops that sort of like pushes the art to a different aesthetic, a new aesthetic, right? And the Oseberg, I don't know if I know it too well in the context, but I mean, with the yelling style, there's definitely a sense of like the Danes and the yelling sort of dynasty, sort of pushing a very specific Christian influenced, European influenced style
mm-hmm.
at that specific point in time. And it's sort of that thing of it marries sort of the continental European styles with a very specific Scandinavian style.
Mm-hmm.
And in that sort of creating a new direction of Viking art, right?
Yeah,
As we know it in Marvin style and Ringerike style.
mm-hmm.
So definitely there's, you could say there's a sense of fashion in it, very much in at that point, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm not too fond of the of the fashion term in that sense when it comes to that because it is because with fashion it's all often about like chasing the new
Yeah,
direction, new style. Whereas with this sort of artwork, it's very much so about honoring the tradition, like always taking something from the tradition and bringing it into your current artwork, right?
okay, yeah,
And I mean, I think it's also a very human thing of you you can't really escape sort of evolving the style when you create a new object, right? You sort of invent new sort of little things that sort of evolve the style in a new direction, and you see that in the style throughout the periods, right? It's usually not like, I mean, we have these categorizations of the periods, like the Urne style starts at a specific time and then it ends at a specific time. But I mean, if you look at the artifacts, it's a gradual period, like a gradual transition from one to the next.
okay,
It's not like a shift, like a
yeah,
dramatic shift.
mm-hmm.
So you get the sense that it sort of evolves gradually into the next, right? And it's that sort of like there's a change in the next generation of doing the artworks, but it's very much rooted in the previous generation.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sort of a natural evolution of the art, right? Whereas if you sort of the understanding of fashion right now in our modern time is very different in the way that it chases the like novelty and that sort of thing. And in that sense, it's very different. Yeah.
I wonder whether it's people adding on their own little influences as it goes. Even because again, there's no written source to look back on. There's no booklet, no manual. Some people, I guess, would misremember maybe ways, but also they're human, so they would add their own little bit to it, their own influence to it that then they would pass down. Most artists have a signature, so
Yeah.
they just put their little twist on it, and it just then almost like a game of telephone,
Yeah.
where it starts with one thing but ends with something else, and everyone's just tweaked it a tiny little bit. Is it?
I mean, that's kind of what I really love about that sort of art, because it's like it doesn't like it is today. Like it doesn't have a like that artist, like the genius artist that sort of puts a signature on the artwork and sort of like reinvented art by his oeuvre, and like it's sort of that building on the collective like knowledge about this art, and then you're putting your own little spin on it to add to it, like sort of a lineage of art, right? It's sort of like it's very beautiful in that way.
Yeah,
I kind of really love that idea.
yeah. I think also it's worth remembering that we're not talking about a year or 5 years. We're talking it's a change across hundreds of years, and I think I'm guilty of it, falling into a trap of when we speak of styles or ages. It's so easy to say it, and then you speak about certain points within that age that 500 years then becomes reduced down to 10 events, and you then forget we're talking 500 years, or we're talking like this a certain art style's around for 100 years. That's back to the first world war. First world war. That's a long time. You can't just gloss over it, and it's things will things will, if you imagine somebody drew something in 1926, which is actually a little bit after the First World War. My history is a bit better than that. They drew something in 1926, and then there was no. It was just drawn without. They taught somebody something. There was no access to phones, no written record. They just taught somebody. They drew something a couple of times, and that was it. And they said, "Okay, you got to teach the next person this." It's they've got maybe because again they probably don't do it maybe every day. They've got to remember how to do it, figure it out, and then pass that on. And I guarantee by the time you got from 1926 to 2026, it's not looking exactly how it did all those years ago.
No. Yeah.
It'd be an interesting thing to try.
Yeah. It's
maybe we should leave a time capsule.
And that's the thing with the sort of like our modern world too, is we have this academia of like archiving and sort of records of what was, right. And we don't have that in the same way from the Viking Age, right? Because it wasn't a thing really. It was, I mean, even the oral thing of keeping memory is like it worked very differently, and it was that sort of game of telephone, right?
And it's the emphasis, I think, as well. What would be important? It's so interesting trying to put yourself back into the minds of people 1,000 years ago. But how would they have the majority of people? We're very lucky, and I think we sometimes underestimate how lucky we are that most of us, we can have a 9 to 5 job, and then you have the ability to have an interest in something else. You can research something else. You can deep dive into very niche topics and have these real, deep interests into something. Whereas 1,000 years ago, would the everyday person be really kind of that interested in what happened 500 years, 1,000 years before? Because they're having to work really hard just to survive. Life's hard on the farm. You have to work the
I
farm.
mean,
Like, do you have that freedom to really look and I guess you'd hear stories of it, but would there be that? I don't know.
yeah, I mean, my understanding is like, I don't know. I mean, but I mean, I don't think. I think, in other words, I think some people at least would have some free time to sort of have a
Yeah.
think about, like, and of course, there's times of like storytelling and that sort of thing, and like gathering around the bonfire,
Hmm.
whatever way that looked. And we see that in the storytelling and the culture that's sort of delivered to us today, right?
Hmm.
Um,
I guess it's very different, isn't it? To we today look for very almost sterile information.
yeah,
We want it from a if it's not from a PhD or student or candidate or professor, then people are like, well, I'm not interested. I don't even want to. And even then, I've presented people with information from people like Lesha Gadea, and people are like, no, never heard of him. And I'm like, what? So you're not going to listen to anything, but for the most part, people want that. They want it to come from an academic source, and it's written in a very kind of academic way for them to believe it. Whereas, again, when you're talking through stories, it's a very different way of getting that history. It's much
yeah,
more a living, isn't it, to get it?
it's it's a very different, uh, how to say, like a different way of keeping knowledge, right? Because the way we do it today is sort of like when it's written down, it's dead. Like it's sort of like freezed in this, like this is the understanding, this is how
Yeah.
it works,
Okay. Yeah.
and you can sort of retell it, but you have to stick to that sort of like freeze frame of it, how it was then.
Hmm.
It's not living anymore in the same way, right? It's
Hmm.
sort of detached from culture in a way of how we live.
Hmm.
It can of course like inspire how we do how we live and how we sort of see the world, but it is a different way of understanding knowledge, right?
Hmm.
And it's like the way of storytelling, the oral storytelling, uh, it just was a completely different beast of yeah, like it was living knowledge. It changed like every time you told it. It like and the same with the art. Like every time you made new art, it changed in a way, right? Uh, and it's a funny thing of that. Like you can trace the like sort of the essence or the core of some of the stories. Like Sigurd, for example, was a character that sort of had like appeared like way back, or at least the events in the saga about him, like is from way before the Viking Age,
Hmm.
and it
Yeah.
sort of like
Yeah. I think.
carries through into the Viking Age, the end of the Viking Age, and even after that. And the same in the art, you can sort of tell that people were, even though the art style changed, it was you very much have the sense that at the end of the Viking Age or the middle of the Viking Age, the artist was very aware of what came before, like even like centuries before.
Mhm.
I don't know if they saw the artworks or like if it was just a matter of like this tradition carrying over, but you so clearly see that sort of through line. Like even though it's changed, it sort of like revolves around the same core in a way. It's
Yeah.
very
It's really.
fascinating. Yeah.
It's interesting how it gets. I imagine there would be points that maybe don't change within stories. You will have, in the Sigurd story, you have Sigurd, you have his, is it his uncle? Is it his uncle?
Oh,
Rhaegar? Is it his uncle or is it Fafnir's? Maybe Fafnir's uncle. But then you have you have that character. Then you have him slaying Fafnir, and eating the heart tends to be part of it. But there are elements then that fill in
yeah,
where you can maybe have more freedom with it. So I think there are versions of the Sigurd story where there is somewhere he like burns his thumb and he licks the blood off his thumb, and that gives him the ability to hear
yeah,
birds. And I think there's like one in Ireland where it's like slightly different, where he does something else, and some people like he just eats it. So there's these, but the end goal is the same, that he gets this ability to hear the birds speaking, who then say that his
yeah,
uncle, or I can't remember if it's his uncle, is going to betray him. But so that part is set in stone, but the way you get to it is then maybe fluid, and you could change that. I wonder if that's similar with the art, that you get this. But these things are rigid, and which I guess you could probably attest to, whether these parts are like appear in almost everything, but then the rest you have are a little bit more
yeah. Because you
fluid.
get sort of the sense with the stories too that there's sort of like plot lines and stuff that sort of carries through, but the morale of the story might change, or the things that the hero or the main character goes through might change, or like the way he gains knowledge. Uh, one story it might be on, or in one version it might be like licking the blood of his thumb. In another version it might be something entirely different. But you sort of get these like multiverse
Mm-hmm.
versions of it, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's sort of like it all sort of ties in to the same fabric, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's sort of like these Lego blocks in a way that you sort of combine in different ways. Uh, but some things stay the same, but they're combined in different ways and stuff. Like it's and the point is like it's the point is not that this story is true, that it's relaying Sigurd's story exactly how it was. Like, I mean, we don't even know if he exists or not, or existed or not, and that's not important either. The knowledge, the wisdom of the story is what it actually relates to us. Like all these different parts that sort of come together, like
Mm-hmm.
the gaining of knowledge, like all these things, the story about fate, and like all these things that sort of recurring themes in the sagas, right? In
It'd be so
different ways. Yeah,
it'd be so interesting to know, because again, we can only look back at these stories and apply our morality to them, modern morality, or try and put ourselves in the mind of somebody 1,000 years and apply what we would consider their morality, which you can never do successfully. So even things with like him eating the dragon heart, I wonder if that's like, obviously the heart is super rich in nutrient, which is, most people today, eating heart is quite probably abhorrent to a lot of people. They don't want to eat heart. It's quite,
yeah,
it's probably like more of an old fashioned thing to eat, but most people, I would say, wouldn't eat heart. Whereas maybe part of that story is like, actually eat the heart. It's really good for you. That's where a lot of nutrients and goodness and kind
yeah.
of all these
I mean,
bits are.
I think especially in this case, it might be more. I mean, of course, the heart sort of plays a part, but as far as I remember, it's more so the blood that he
Yeah, yeah.
sort of carries the sort of the magic of it all, right? But it's actually fascinating with exactly that motive because we get that told in the story that he licks his thumb,
Hmm.
and that's actually a motive that we see in the art. That's sort of like we see that even from the very early periods under the gold bractate, we see this motive of
Oh,
a guy
okay.
with a sort of a thumb in front of his mouth,
Yeah.
uh,
Do you
and then
remember where
we
that's from?
see that told in a story that's very late, like that's retold after the Viking Age, right? So that motive, both in mythology and in the art, is something that carries through, and that's a very essential motive or gesture, or like it had a very deep meaning.
Do you remember where that bractate's from, off the top of your head?
I think there's a few. It's a recurring motive.
Because there's it just there's a cross shaft in, I can't remember the exact church. It's near Carnforth, northeast, that has a similar. So on one of the panels, it tells a bit about Sigurd, and one of them is that he's got his thumb in his mouth. So that's very interesting. I was wondering whether it was in England or elsewhere in Scandinavia, because that's then just the fact that that little piece exists in the art from different areas, and again the cross shaft being part of that Christianization and that integration period is also interesting, that then that exists enough for them to put it on this also tool of assimilation, I guess. It's art's extremely powerful, that I think not that we don't realize today, but I think maybe we take it for granted because we just see so much, and particularly with AI, the dreaded AI, which I feel like we complain about that all the time on here at the minute. But that has to.
It still can't create like Viking Age art, so we'll see about that.
You're good for now. You're safe for the moment.
For now, yeah. Let's put that at the end of the sentence. For now, we'll get there. But,
yeah. But there is that. I was gonna say, if you take out, the it just recreating, other people's artwork, it devalues the appreciation of the skill. Even if you just look at that little bit of that, if I can just type into ChatGPT, draw me this picture, so and so, whatever your morality is on it, put that aside. Just the act of me being able to do that inherently just devalues somebody's skill of being able to do that, because it's like, oh, well, I can just do this really easily now, and it doesn't have that kind of select few who are able to create. Like, I couldn't. I've never been particularly good at art. I can carve on horns, but other than that, like, when it comes to drawing, I just don't maybe have that. Well, maybe I've never practiced. I don't know, but there are people who have this skill and they've practiced it and they've earned it, and they deserve the kind of recognition for that.
Yeah, I hope, and I think it will be the case, but I think that we will sort of move into an era where the sentiment of this was actually created by a human becomes more valuable, right? Because and for me that ties in very well to the understanding of like Viking Age art, and like that appreciation of objects imbued with meaning, right? Because it's not going to be imbued with meaning or magic being carved by a machine. Like, you sort of have to put in the effort to create the magic. So I would hope that sentiment becomes a lot stronger in the coming years.
It is part of it.
The AI sort of thing, right?
Yeah,
I think it will in some sense, because with AI, everything sort of loses meaning in a way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything becomes the same. It becomes meaningless. Like, yeah.
Even if you compare it to, let's say, a wood carving, because done completely by hand, or a wood carving that's just done by a machine, which we've had for a long time, that can just kind of perfectly recreate an image that we drop into a computer. For me, there's always something more valuable and more special about the one that's done by hand, and they could look almost identical, but the one by hand will just have some imperfections to it, I think it's the same with the horns that we do. Like there's no two designs are ever, even if it's the same design, they're never identical because humans aren't perfect. There will be a slight little wobble maybe or a slight little thing, and that, to me anyway, that adds the beauty and the value, because that is, there's beauty in the imperfection rather than it being, just because I
Yeah.
remember we the carvings that we do, we experimented with using a resin, like a clear resin with the ink that we use, the ink we use now in the resin, to fill it, just so it gave maybe a more like, so now we carve it and then we put an ink in, so you get that indentation. And I thought, oh, if we use a resin, we could put the ink in, mix the ink in with the resin, put the resin in, and it would leave like a smooth finish, but you'd have the carving in there. And I was curious. I was like, I wonder what this will look like. Did one, and it worked almost too well that that by the time it was carved, it was sanded, it was all the carving was smooth, and let's say it was black, but it just looked like it was drawn on with marker pen. There was no character to it anymore. There was no depth to it, and I was like, "Well, I'm
Yeah.
never doing that again," because it's
Yeah.
just then it just looks like, well, someone's just drawn on it.
Yeah. That's the thing too with the designs I did for the books.
Mm-hmm.
Is I was like very meticulous in like doing it in, I think in Illustrator, Adobe Illustrator, you can do like vectorized
Okay,
artwork, so it's like very precise and you can scale it up and like it doesn't
it doesn't
lose,
distort.
it
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah, yeah.
become pixelated. So because I wanted it to be so perfect, right? and that's the thing now. I'm sort of like moving away from that because no, it actually needs that sort of like imperfection or that hand drawn thing, or like with the that sort of precision, you sort of like, it doesn't always line up so perfectly in the artworks either, and you have to sort of leave space to sort of get it to work properly, like make it come alive in that sense. It's it kind
That's
of loses something with the
yeah.
perfectness, right?
That's one that I think there's a. I think it's from Gotland. There's an image that we do on a horn, and I redrew it using Procreate. And but there's an over under on the original that's wrong,
Yeah.
and I fixed it for the horn carving, because obviously I don't want people. You get again, but again you get this. It's that position you're in. It's like, well, do I fix it,
Yeah.
because you don't want people then being like, oh, that's wrong, and then you have to then explain
That
to
fucked
them.
up. Like,
Yeah,
well,
you have to explain to them. Well, actually, the original is wrong, so I fixed it, but it's not really completely accurate now because I fixed the error. And it's like, well,
yeah.
should I? Because things do have mistakes in.
Yeah. No, but you added your own little flourish to it, then
Yeah, I think.
you build on it. Yeah.
But it's part of that thing, isn't there? Of yeah, it's so interesting especially when you're selling things,
Yeah.
you want them to be right, and
Yeah.
does that
And
then
that's the thing, like,
become?
because that's also what we're sort of, because we've done a lot of commission work together. Like, that's actually been amazing because we're sort of like sitting in your own little bubble and doing your artwork is sort of like you sort of get stuck in your own ways, and it's been like very freeing to sort of do them together. And like when you come from different sort of perspectives in that way, and
Mhm.
different sort of aesthetic taste and stuff, you sort of influence each other and push each other to
Yeah.
sort of get out of your comfort zone and sort of because again I have been like very focused on especially with the books, like being very precise and very correct in the historical sense,
Mhm.
and that was very good for the books. But like, what do you do when you sort of need and want to cater to like the modern audience that has a different aesthetic taste, or like want something different? Like, how the fuck do you, like, that's a completely different thing.
Yeah, and I
uh,
think it's again, it's that question of when this could be a whole episode on its own. And I've come across it so many times with clothing t-shirts that we do, that you'll put a super original, realistic, historically accurate piece of artwork on it, and you think you're so happy with it, it's amazing, and you're like, yes, this is the one. We're
Yeah.
gonna sell tons of these, and then nobody buys it
Yeah.
because unfortunately there are only a very, this is a niche group anyway, but then to you're making even more niche, going for
Yeah.
that small percentage of people who are then looking for the historically accurate, perfect thing. So you have to then open it up to, as annoying as it is, as to the enthusiasts, the bros, and you have to cater to that too. And we've had to do it with the business, because otherwise then you either cater to that and also get to make the fun, historically accurate things, or you don't get to make any of it. And that's
Yeah. Completely.
that's the sad reality of it, is that you have to play both sides and find that kind of where you're comfortable with, because
Yeah,
there
I think
isn't
because
the
I was very
market.
stuck in that. I was very stuck in that sort of mindset of no, it has to be correct, and I need to like deliver the real historical thing to people
Mhm.
because and educate them on this thing because
Yeah,
it's the right thing to do, and like, but I think I've sort
well,
of
they'll
come
only buy it if they like it,
over a
or
long,
like,
long process, like come to that sort of like, oh, maybe it's actually more interesting to create something, yes, that is rooted in history and like that tradition,
mhm,
but what does it actually look like when it's like made for people now, right?
mhm.
Like, let's not take this dead thing and sort of resuscitate it.
Yeah,
Let's actually create something that speaks to people now, that builds on the tradition, but make it alive today. Like, what
and
does
you're
it
only
mean for people to get into this art and this style and like connect to it? Like, what? Because people are obviously looking for some sense of meaning in this tradition and the artwork, right? And even the runes and stuff. Like, it's like, why not lean into that and sort of experiment with like, so how does it look like if we actually, like, of course take the tradition seriously, but move it forward into contemporary
yeah,
design, like our sensibilities of taste and stuff, right?
yeah. There's space for both. Obviously, you have Luciano, who is the purist of the purists. We spoke about him last week we had Ruben Terillo on Oban from Viking, and you know, Luciano is the most purist of purists you could ever get when it comes to Viking art. And then you have like Oban, who does pretty much historical tattoos. He'll try and get it from an artifact or a piece, and then use that. And that's amazing if that's what you want. But some people don't want exactly
I
as it
mean,
was. They want it inspired by. They want it kind of like
yeah,
it to look that style, but they want maybe their dog in it. So I'm reading a book I'm obsessed with this book series called Dungeon Crawler Carl. Love it. It's like my favorite book series I've um,
yeah,
ever read, and it's super nerdy. But there is a cat in that, and she has like a pet velociraptor type thing, and she rides on the back of it. It's fantasy, it's batshit wild, it's insane. But I'm in love with she's called Princess Donut, and I am in love with her. She is like one of my favorite characters from any book, and she has this pet velociraptor. And I messaged my friend Tom, Tom Cox. He's kind of getting into tattooing, just drawing. I was like, do you reckon you could do a Viking style of Princess Donut and her pet velociraptor? I'm like, because it'd be really cool. And it's like, that's because a lot of my tattoos are Viking style and I like the style, but I also want something that's relatable to me that no one else is probably going to have. And I'm like, that'll be really
definitely.
cool. And that's part of the fun of it. But I've also got like accurate stuff tattooed on me as well. So he doesn't have to be one or the other.
No, not at all. Not at all. Yeah, I mean, I'm actually reminded that we just did like a Zelda sword, like in
Yeah.
the Triforce symbol in the Viking style. But and it was so fucking fun to do because it's like oh, how would it look like if it was in that sort of Viking style? And that sort of leaves you, like, it sort of sets you free to sort of, yeah, of course I mean, in this case, I was sticking fairly tightly to Viking styles, but still, like, it sort of sets you free to do whatever you want with it, right?
Mm-hmm. Was it?
That's so fun.
Was it Colin Dale who did a stormtrooper helmet in the Viking style? I feel like he did one with for sure with when Sean Parry had Northern Fire. I feel like he did like a T-shirt or something. It's like like a stormtrooper helmet, but in Viking style. I'm like, that's really cool. That's fun. And I know like Gloria and Brock do some like a lot of Lord of the Rings inspired piece. I'm like, well, why not? Why as long as you're not saying this is accurate, then why not have at it?
But I mean, that's the thing. Like, and it's sort of like it shifted my mental sort of thing of being stuck in that. So no, it needs to be accurate because I mean, I can not do Viking style when I do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like mentally, you sort of free yourself up to have fun with it in a completely different way. Like it's sort of like, yeah, because it's obviously not a Star Wars helmet. Like a real Star Wars helmet from the Viking Age, right? Like,
exactly.
It sort of sets you free from the get-go.
Yeah. Do you think that you worried that maybe it would devalue their other work in a way, or that maybe people wouldn't take you as serious if you? Because I think that was that part of it that you thought?
Yeah, because I mean, I'm not an academic I mean, I'm an architect by education, but I'm not a historian like by education or anything. I'm not educated in in that sense. So yeah, of course, like it was important for me to be very authentic with the presentation of the stars, right?
Yeah,
especially in the books. But
it's almost like you have to be.
This sort of the sense where, like, yeah, I really get the sense that no, I've done that. I've sort of done my work.
you paid your dues.
And as I said, when I do like Viking inspired art, I cannot not do something that's very rooted in the historic styles. But now I feel like I sort of tied a bow on. No, I know my shit when it comes to the historical stuff, and I'm not too scared to move into more free flowing stuff or experimental stuff in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And that in no terms mean that I'm moving away from studying the old stuff and like communicating what that was about. Like that's very much what we're doing and are gonna do with the Gelmir project, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're publishing a lot of like the old artifacts, and like we're gonna do tons of articles explaining the historical facts about it. But it is sort of that thing of like, on one hand, we're presenting the historical stuff, and on the other hand, it's also about like, what do we do with the knowledge now, right?
Yeah.
How do we make it active? How do we make it a living culture instead of just studying a dead culture? Mm-hmm. And that's so fucking fun to dive into, and sort of because also like meeting and talking with people, and you get the sense very clearly that people want to take this on them and like live it, not just like. And the reenactment is a like wonderful thing, but I mean, you also get the sense that a lot of people, like many people getting into this field, like it means a lot more than just a reenactment stuff. You mm-hmm. often reenact because you sort of have a deeper meaning connected to the traditions and the stuff that you do there. So, mm-hmm. so being able to sort of creating new traditions in this way is like very exciting and very beautiful in a way.
Yeah.
This is very meaningful for a lot of people, right?
I bet. I know that I've been to tattooists and spoke to people that I know, and I said, like, especially when it comes to tattoos, that they're so personal. And yes, so I've got like silly tattoos. Like I recently got Thor trying to pick up a cat to represent Jormungandr. Like that's a silly one. That doesn't have any deep meaning. If I get Princess Donut riding a Velociraptor, that's silly. That's like a silly little toe. But I also have ones that mean a lot to me, that have like meaning imbued into them, that I've spoken with the designer about, and we've come up with this thing together. So and tattoos are so personal that I imagine, if you say you're going to design one for something, people open up to you about the depths of their lives because they want to get it into it, and they want to tell the story of loss or tragedy or love and all these beautiful things. And
Definitely
being able to immortalize that for somebody in a piece of art is
I mean
as beautiful as any. As
story of it, like that is like sometimes we're very heavy, like themes of loss and like family, remembering family members or friends, and like it has a very profound sort of meaning, or definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
But not to discount like a Princess Donut, like because even, and I was thinking like even like doing it in a Viking style makes it meaningful and personal to you, right? And I think we shouldn't discount that, because it is very profound in a way. It's fucking silly and it should be that, right? But it's
if you want to
also meaningful still, right?
If you want a task of drawing a tortoise Persian with a tiara and sunglasses riding a velociraptor,
Definitely.
I will send you some out. I'll send you some pictures.
Please do.
That's I would love to see your take on that.
I would love to do that.
I feel like you'd actually like the book. You'd be interested in it. It's
I need to text me the title of it. I'd love to.
I've told so many people about it. Like my sister started reading it. My friends started reading it. I've had a bunch of people who turned onto these books because they're just silly. They're a lot of fun. But yeah, I'll send you the design and we'll see if you can. Do something. So, but yeah, before we wrap up, you were at Jorvik. How did you find it? Was that your first time?
Yeah, it was. It was amazing. It was it was really fun. Went there with Connor Einer's journey, and
I know. I mean, I didn't go for any extended period of time, but I was up just dropping some meat off for the banquet that they do and one of the other events. So I popped up on, I think it was like the Thursday and the Friday just briefly, but I didn't know you were there. Otherwise, I would have messaged and been like,
"No, I didn't really announce as much."
no. So I didn't realize until after.
So I'm not gonna tattoo there, but we had a little setup with the books and stuff.
Yeah.
My books and Connor's have them all. So
Were you selling? Were you selling them? You selling them there?
Yeah.
In the moot.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
It was. They were really gracious to have us have a little stall there. So it was really, really cool. Yeah.
Because you do tattoo, right?
No, I don't. I do tattoo designs, but I'm not a tattooer.
Why did I think you tattooed as well?
Yeah, no, I don't think I don't have the patience, and like, no.
Yeah, I don't know why I thought you. Maybe it's just so many people do. I thought you
was sort of leading me on to it. Like, why don't you tattoo? Like, you should get into this.
Have you ever thought about it? Have you ever thought about doing it?
I mean, yeah, I mean, it would make a lot of sense. Like, it would be again very meaningful and like. But I mean, I really much love being in my own like little bubble working.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot imagine
You can erase it.
like being with another person like for hours, like having to interact that way. No, that
Well,
would
that's
for me that would be very tough, and I really appreciate like tattoo artists for
mhm.
like
Yeah.
doing that, like even sitting like crunched over like some dude or a woman like for hours because you just
Mhm.
I mean that's the thing, you just have to get it done right then and
Yeah.
there.
Oh,
There's no fucking breaks or something like yeah.
I bet tattooists hear some stories because people open up to barbers, let alone a tattooist. And I know I have when you sat there for 3-4 hours. Like you can't help but talk. People don't like silence.
I know.
So yeah, I bet they hear some.
I bet I know they do.
Oh yeah. I also know they do.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'd like that part of the job of hearing all the gossip. I'd be like,
Hearing the gossip, yeah.
yeah, go on, what else? Come on. That's
Oh, what's the tea?
yeah, that's fun. Exactly. Um, okay, we'll wrap up and then we'll let people ask you some questions. But first, we ask all our guests when I remember, and I've been quite good at remembering this. Whether if you had a time machine and you could just drop back into some point in the Viking Age and learn one thing, what is there anything that jumps out? What would it be? You're safe from germs and attack. You can just go back and learn the answer to a question.
I mean, let's settle it once and for all and find out if Vikings had tattoos or not. Like
Yeah.
that would be a fun thing to be able to come back and say, well, actually,
Oh, yeah. Cite your source. Well, actually, I was there, so
I have a photo on my phone now.
yeah. Actually,
Yeah.
AI.
Oh yeah, for sure. No,
Jonas, thank you so much for joining us. It's a
always
pleasure as always. We
good.
once you get further down the road with Gelmy, we'll have to get you and Connor on together, and
Definitely. We'd love to.
we'll
Yeah.
talk about all the fun stuff you're doing because
We're
it's
just getting started on the next book. It's, I mean, probably can't say too much, but I think as it looks right now, we're gonna do a book on runes right now,
nice.
and
Yeah,
that's gonna be a major project. So,
that's one
and
that'll
probably of interest to a lot of people. So,
yeah. It is that's a topic though. A lot of people
yeah,
love runes. Put
yeah,
runes on something, people buy
yeah,
it. They love it. They love
they do,
runes.
they do.
But I saw your is it like a pack that you do of almost like it's like I don't know their name. It looks like they're almost like bandings or strips of different
Yeah,
artwork.
like
I saw you put
patterns.
yeah like, and I saw that earlier today when I was scrolling. I was like, they're so good. They're so if you're learning, you're wanting to kind of pick these things up. They're so handy to have it in a place where you can just practice it and see it and break it down. I think that it's so important for people wanting to learn this stuff because
Yeah,
without it, it's a minefield. It is just like, what do I do? How do I do it? I'm looking at these pictures of pieces in the museum and they're not very clear and I can't quite understand it and they're not
yeah, and the
complete.
deteriorate. You can't tell the details, and the artist fucked up on some details. They didn't weave the
Mm-hmm.
bands properly, and like yeah, all that. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's
so
that's a lot.
it's
It's a lot.
keep doing what you're doing. It makes
We're
everybody.
definitely working on building some great resources at Gelmir. So definitely let the check gelmir.com out
Yeah.
to follow us along and get some good info on
Mm-hmm.
Viking art and everything else we're setting out onto getting ourselves into.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then obviously give Jonas a follow on his own Instagram, Jonas Lau Markussen.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That's right, isn't it?
Huh?
That's your Instagram handle. It's just your
That's
name.
my personal one. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Go on.
I think the main, I mean, if you want sort of the historical stuff, and yeah, the main thing is like on Gelmir going
Okay,
forward. And
nice.
right now I'm posting like some commission work and like some fun experiments. So there's a Zelda sword. There's some. There might be a little Princess Donut coming up. I think.
Well, I hope
But
so.
it's a little bit more going.
The
So
gauntlet
yeah,
is the gauntlet's thrown. If you you've not seen how ridiculous this cat is yet, so I'll have fun
I'm
to see
looking
what you
forward
could
to it.
create.
I'm committed. I'm committed.
Oh, I look forward to it. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So for me, Daniel and Scott Aaron one, Horns voting for the business, and then Nordic Mythology podcast across the board. Go and check it out on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button. You'll get notified every time we either go live or put a video out. And with that said, let's wrap up.